You're listening to Simply the Best Sports Take, the best podcast breaking down the best stuff in sports with host Sean Bingham. His takes are so good, he dropped the mic, but then you wouldn't be able to hear him, and that would suck.
Welcome into STB Sports Take, Simply the Best Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Bingham. Thank you for being here. Please hit that subscribe button. Whatever platform you are on, subscribe. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor Podcasts. Everywhere you get your podcasts, we are there. So please hit that subscribe button. Guys, it's been a week since my last podcast. That's kind of the norm. Every Monday, that's the schedule. I wanted to do one earlier just to brag about my Warriors in 6 that I predicted in ink, in Sharpie, on the internet before the series even started. Everyone thought I was crazy, especially after the Celtics went up 1-0 and then 2-1. They're like, oh, it's not going to happen. And I was like, I'm sticking with my pick. For sure the Warriors, maybe it goes 7, but I'm sticking with Warriors in 6. And sure enough, Warriors in 6. They win 3 straight games to close out the series. We knew that Game 5 was going to be very, very pivotal. That was my last podcast that I did, was just before Game 5, and then we had Games 5 and 6 last week. And the Warriors won both of them. I said, whoever wins Game 5, I think will win the series, and I think the Warriors will win it. And they did, and then Game 6 was just, it was over before it started, it felt like. So, great series for the most part. Very weird playoffs, though. We had a lot of close series, but we didn't have very many close games. It was very bizarre. I didn't love that. Like, I like to watch games that are down to the wire, the last minute, the last 2 minutes, overtimes, last second shots, things like that. We didn't get much of that at all this playoffs in any of the series. There was maybe a couple of games here and there that were close, but we didn't even get very many Game 7s. The Celtics gave us a Game 7 in Miami, Eastern Conference Finals. I, of course, went to that. They also gave us a Game 7 against the Bucks. So they won 2 Game 7s. Good for them. Lose the championship in 6, though. I don't think you'll see the Celtics back. I really don't. I don't think they should have even been there in the first place. They're a very good team. Clearly, they made it to the finals. But I feel like they kind of just got lucky with Chris Middleton being hurt. That's part of the game. But I think the Bucks win that series if Middleton is healthy. And there's a good chance the Bucks repeat as champions, if we're being honest, if he's healthy. And then the Nets were just, I don't know what happened there. It's like they could never get it together, got swept. That was a disaster. So I would say the Celtics were, second, third, somewhere in there, best team in the Eastern Conference. So I just don't think you're going to see them back. Like they're missing some pieces. Jason Tatum just is not that guy. He's a very talented player. I watch a lot of the Fox Sports talk shows, and one of them, First Things First, with Nick Wright and who are the other guys? I'm spacing their names right now. But Chris Broussard, he's actually one of my favorites. And then Kevin Wiles, those guys. So they have like this club superstar thing they do, which is actually kind of funny. And they have let Jason Tatum into club superstar, like anointed him a superstar. Because obviously there's a difference between a superstar, an all-star, and a really good player, right? They're saying that Jason Tatum has been elevated all the way to superstar. And I am here to say that he is not. He is absolutely not. That club is reserved for the likes of Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Steph Curry. Those are true superstars. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Joel Embiid, I would say, is even in there. Jokic would be in there. Jason Tatum is not. So he's an all-star. He's a really good player, but he's not in club superstar. And he proved that in these playoffs, these finals. He played very poorly. Games 5 and 6 were again not very close. It was weird. Like every game was double-digit deficit or difference, at the end of the game. And it was very weird. But love the NBA Finals. Very sad that they're over. We still get to talk all sorts of stuff now in the offseason about what's going to happen. What did this series do for everybody's legacies? What's going to happen in free agency? Who's going to make some moves to kind of challenge now? Can the Warriors repeat? Will the Celtics get back? Well, I've already told you I don't think the Celtics can get back. For the answer or for the question, can the Warriors repeat? The answer is yes, they absolutely can. Because here's the thing. Steph will continue to be Steph for at least another year or two. Draymond has seen a big decline, but I think he'll be at least as good as he was, and he's kind of proving to not be that important to their team anyway. And I'll get into him here in a second after this prediction. But Klay is only going to get better. Their second most important and their second best player, Klay Thompson, he's only going to be better next year than he was this year, especially these playoffs. He was coming off of nearly 3 years being absent from the game of basketball, 2 full seasons plus off seasons, and then half of a third season. It was 916 days, I believe. It's like a very long time, like 2.5 years. So he was as rusty as could be. He showed flashes of greatness. I think he's going to work hard this offseason. He's going to rehab even more, get back in true basketball shape. And I think you'll see Klay Thompson be probably not to the Klay Thompson level, because I'd say he was like 80% of himself these playoffs. I think you'll see him get up to like 90% of himself for next season and next year's playoffs. So they'll see Klay Thompson become better. Steph will remain where he's at. Draymond will remain where he's at. And then Andrew Wiggins is very open about wanting to stay in San Francisco. He wants to stay on the Warriors. And he's a fantastic third scoring option. He played phenomenal. There was chatter that maybe he should get Finals MVP. Obviously, that was erroneous. There was no chance anyone was getting it but Steph. He was far and away the best player in the series. And while Andrew Wiggins played... So here's the thing. Andrew Wiggins, he did play better than he typically does, more so than Steph did. But that's the thing about Steph. Like, Andrew Wiggins, like, upper echelon wow performances by his standards are like very average performances by Steph's standards. And so Steph was clearly the runaway MVP for this series, deservedly so. But Wiggins makes a fantastic third option. He really, really does. Like, that's a great third option to have. And then Jordan Poole, don't know what's going to happen there. If they can keep him, keep Andrew Wiggins, and then you have obviously Steph and Klay there, and Klay we're assuming is going to get a little bit better. You keep Draymond. That's their 5 most important players. I would put Draymond down around 4th or 5th most important on the team. And he's the guy, he's out there bragging more than anybody. He's talking more than anybody. He's on Twitter more than anybody. He's doing all these things, and it's like, dude, it feels like he's the guy that in high school was put on a group project with like the smartest kid in the class, did nothing to deserve the A, or like the very bare minimum to deserve the A, but then he gets it and he takes all the credit. Like, I'm the man. Thank you. Our project is number 1. You guys suck. We're the best. And it's like, dude, you just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Like, Draymond he's an important piece for them, but he's very replaceable. Very replaceable. He's 4th, 5th best at most. I will give him, he was 3rd best for their first title. He was 4th best for their next 2, and he was 4th or 5th best for this one. So to be the 4th or 5th best guy on your team and to be bragging like you're some mega superstar when you averaged a triple single, he did not average in double figures for anything. And so people can be like, defense, and that's the go-to response for people that don't know basketball and that don't and that realize that it's this ambiguous thing that we can't calculate quite right. Is Draymond a great defender? Yes, of course he is. I'm not denying that. Is his defense valuable to them? Yes, of course it is. I'm not denying that. But there are statistical categories, blocks, steals, rebounds, that do have a lot to do with defense. Points and assists are obviously offensive, but Draymond he's a triple single guy. He fouled out of 3 games. He fouled out of 3 games. You can't tell me that he's this phenomenal defender. He's fouling out of multiple games. He's a ticking time bomb. He's a liability. Like, there's so many things about Draymond that are overrated. And so when I see him go after guys like Charles Barkley, if Draymond wants to come after me and say, hey, you never won an NBA title, I'd be like, yeah, that's true. You are a better basketball player than me. I admit that. But when he goes after like Charles Barkley, I'm like, Draymond, like you would have been like 3rd string to Charles Barkley in his prime. You would have been the backup to his backup. That's how much better Charles Barkley is than Draymond Green. But he thinks in his mind he's the greatest. He's very delusional, very insecure, and it's kind of annoying to watch, you know. But it's whatever. It's also, it creates drama. He's trying to get his podcast some, you know, more viewerships and things like that. So good for him for that. I'm sure he'll make a great broadcaster here in a couple years when he's officially washed up. But So anyway, so with that, they've got Jonathan Kuminga, they've got James Wiseman, the Warriors do. I think the Warriors right now would have to be the favorites coming out of the West next year. You got to think that the Lakers are going to do something and still be, with Anthony Davis and LeBron James and Russell Westbrook, you've got to think something has to give, something has to shift, something has to change. That's too much firepower to not be a contender. So you got to think that even though they didn't make the playoffs this year, I'm not counting them out of the West next year. Same thing with the Clippers. They had injured Paul George, injured Kawhi Leonard. Those are their two best players. Something's going to happen there. The Mavericks are knocking down the door. Luka Doncic. Are they going to do something in this offseason? Are they going to try and get a piece to add to Luka so they can be real contenders? Because Luka is there. He's ready. Luka is primed and ready to lead a team to a title, but he can't do it alone. And he tried, and he came decently close, but he can't do it alone. So will they do something? So a lot to be said here in the Western Conference. What will the Jazz do? There's talk that the Jazz are looking at, in fact, I've got it right here. I want to make sure I mention this. Atlanta could trade a combination of Capella, Collins, Herter, and a number 16 pick for Rudy Gobert. So I don't know if that means they'd trade two of those three things, or two of those four things, or three of those four. Or it sounds like not all four of them. If the Jazz got all four, Collins, Herter, Capella, and a number 16 pick, that's a no-brainer slam dunk trade for the Jazz. Even if we get two, though, if we could get Capella and Herter is a three-point bomber. I would love to have him. Capella is a decent rim protector. He's a decent scorer. There was a time where I thought Capella was better than Rudy Gobert. I don't think that anymore, but like 2-3 seasons ago when he was with the Rockets, I did think that. So if we could get Capella and Herter in exchange for Gobert, I'd say take it. Let's do it. I think that's not bad. But so that's something interesting to think about. What will the Jazz do? Are they going to trade Rudy? Is Donovan going to stay? You probably heard the reports about how the Jazz did this, just while we're on the Jazz talk, and then we can go back to the Warriors briefly. But the Jazz did this rebrand, right? And they were all about black and white with highlighter yellow, right? That was like the Jazz rebrand that leaked, and everybody hated it, like everyone. And so they quickly scrambled, like, shoot, what are we going to do? Like, everybody hates this. We can't do this. Like, our fan base doesn't like it. So they decide to announce the rebrand with this thing of, purple is back. So that's the whole rebrand announcement, is purple is back. Meaning, like, well, first off, did we ever lose purple? Like, I don't think it ever went away. And then they announce all these new jerseys that are black and white with highlighter yellow. And then they have this one old school jersey from the Jazz finals years in the late 90s with the mountains, and it's purple jersey. And they just like add that one to the mix of like all the other ones. And so it's like the most dysfunctional rebrand in the history of rebrands. I rebranded a sunglasses company with basically a couple $1,000s worth of budget, and ours was infinitely better than what the Jazz just did with a multi-million-dollar budget. Very dysfunctional, very disorganized, very embarrassing, very obvious that the owner, Ryan Smith, is focused on all the wrong things when it comes to just being an NBA franchise. What is your goal? And if his goal is to not win, not worry so much about games and revenue and the fan base, but to set an example in different things that are important to him, that he thinks are important to society, then I guess that's fine. But I think there's a way to do both, and winning solves a lot of problems. Winning makes you popular, and then when you're popular, you can lead by example and do the right things, right? And so I just think that Ryan Smith's been focused on the wrong things. He's been coddling superstars too much. He's been caught up in the hype and the fame of being an NBA owner and sitting courtside with D. Wade, and he's very woke. And I just think that he needs to focus on winning basketball games. That's what is going to ultimately do the most good, honestly, is winning basketball games. And so this rebrand is it's very clear that they scrambled last minute, couldn't get any new designs approved in time with the league and into production with Nike for the jerseys. And so they just were like, well, it's this old one is already approved. It's already in production. Let's just throw it into the mix and add it and say purple is back. So now this black and white and highlighter yellow rebrand is overshadowed by the fact that the real color is going to be purple. They paint the Jazz note in front of the arena purple, but nothing is purple other than one throwback jersey that never really has gone away. So it just looks very disorganized. It's a microcosm of the Jazz right now, and it feels like things got really good at first when Ryan Smith took over. There was like some excitement around new ownership. I was excited for one. I was stoked about the D-Wade thing. But you look at it, and it's like, and now I've learned that D-Wade didn't actually buy his ownership in the Jazz. It was given to him by Ryan Smith, who bought it for him. D-Wade's his heart is clearly in Miami. He will always be a Miami guy. I just don't know that like much. It feels like the franchise is going downhill since Ryan Smith took over. It took a quick bump up. It was like the new thing, and then it's just been going down ever since. And so we'll see what happens, but that was kind of a funny thing. Okay, back to the Warriors real quick. One thing I forgot to mention, Steph, Clay, and Draymond, those three guys now have the most finals wins all time as a trio, passing the Spurs' Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili. They had 19 finals wins all time, and those Warriors guys now have 21. And there's really good reason to believe they might even get a couple more. So kudos to those guys. I will give it to them with that for Draymond. But okay, so enough about the NBA Finals. Now, what does it do for the legacies, right? Like, where does Steph stand? What does this mean for KD? I want to start with that. Kevin Durant has won 2 championships, and he was Finals MVP for both of those. Well, that's all good and great, except when you realize that he did it with a team that had already won a title without him, and then went 73-9 and made the NBA Finals the next year without him, only to lose in 7 games to LeBron and Kyrie and the Cavs. And so it's like, okay, they had already done it essentially twice without him, and now they just did it again after he left without him. So sandwiched in the middle of 2 titles from the Warriors is 2 more with Kevin Durant. It's kind of like there's hard evidence that they didn't need him. There's very clear, hard evidence that they didn't need him. Now, did he make them infinitely better? Of course he did. Was he the best player on those teams where he won the Finals MVP? Yeah, he was. But the fact remains, they won one before he got there. They got really close on a second one before he got there, and they broke the all-time record for most wins in a regular season without him before he got there. He leaves, and it took them 1 year of people being healthy, and they did it again. The only years they didn't do it, Clay was out. Draymond was out. Steph was out. Like, they had major injuries to their top players. The first year that they're back, they win the title again. It just looks really, really bad for Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant's legacy took a huge hit, in my opinion, by the fact that the Warriors won the title. Even by the fact that they got there, it took a hit. But then they win it in 6, and it takes a humongous hit. So he said, somebody said, let's see if I can find it here. Somebody tweeted, Kevin Durant's legacy just died. He's now just the guy between Harrison Barnes and Andrew Wiggins, the guy who left the Beatles. And Durant actually replied to this random person on Twitter and said, I've been dead since July 4th, 2016, which was the day he announced his next chapter, right? And he announced he was joining the Warriors. But congrats to the Dubs and my boy Steezy, a Fillmore legend. Man been waiting his whole life for a parade on Market Street. So he's admitting, I've been dead since July 4th, 2016. Yeah, dude, you were. You chose to go join a team that was already a super team. They were already a super team. At that time, Draymond was much better than he is now. He was still only third best, but on his team. But they were 3 All-Stars. Steph, Clay, Draymond, all All-Stars. And he joined them. Kevin Durant joined that team that just won 73 games, 73-9 in the regular season, lost in the finals. The year before that, they won the finals, and he joined them. Like, it was the most non-alpha move in the history of sports, okay, by a superstar. He did that. So he's admitting he kind of died then. Well, he's been trying to fight back and change the narrative. What does he do? He joins the Nets with Kyrie. Then they go and get James Harden, so it looks even dumber now. It looks like he's just doing it again. Well, guess what? It's a total failure. Harden bails. Kyrie's a head case. They get swept in the first round by Kyrie's former team. It just looks awful. Now they're saying that Kyrie and the Nets can't come to an agreement on his future, and he likely won't be with the Nets. There's a good chance Kyrie will not be on the Nets. They're saying the Lakers and the Knicks are emerging as the favorites, but there's a very high chance that Kyrie Irving will not be on the Brooklyn Nets next year. So where does that leave Kevin Durant? Who are his teammates? What's going to happen in Brooklyn? This team was like, they spent, I'm looking at it right here, the Lakers and the Nets spent $329 million on payroll for the 2021-2022 season. The Lakers didn't even make the play-in tournament, and the Nets got swept in the first round with $329 million in payroll. What is going on? Like, Kevin Durant just looks so bad right now. He looks so bad. Meanwhile, Steph Curry stays loyal to the Warriors, sticks through some tough years after KD left, Klay's out, Steph himself gets hurt. They miss the playoffs. They end up getting the worst record in the league. But the second they're healthy, they're back, and Steph wins another title, his fourth, and he wins Finals MVP. So, by the way, Steph has 2 MVPs regular season, 1 Finals MVP, 4 championships. The list of guys with 4 championships and 2 MVPs is Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, Tim Duncan, Magic Johnson, LeBron James, Steph Curry. 7 guys in the history of the NBA have 4 titles and 2 MVPs. Steph is one of them. Very, very unique company that he's in. I don't know that those guys are all GOATs. I'm not sure I'd put all of them in the top 10 all time. Bill Russell, I know it's tough to leave him out of your top 10 just because of his accomplishments, but he played in an era where there was like 14 teams or something like that. It was just a very different sport back then. It's one that I have a hard time saying that he's one of the top 10 best players, because if he played, I know you got to compare eras. You can't compare eras because they're so different. For his era, he dominated, but he wouldn't be an all-star in today's league, right? Whereas if you take today's guys, you take any of those other guys, especially Michael, LeBron, the more current ones, Steph, Duncan, they could go back in time to the 50s, 60s, and they'd be the best players in the league. And so it's tough for me to compare, to say like, oh, you can't compare eras. I understand that, like, you have to acknowledge the dominance for what existed at the time, because the human body evolves, the game evolves, like, we just get better at things, right? So I understand that. But the question now is, where does KD rank all time? Where does Steph rank all time? Because I don't think anybody is denying that KD is the better player. But I think you have to put Steph ahead of him all time. I've gone on record saying I think Steph's the greatest point guard of all time. To me, this cemented it. He's got 2 MVPs. He's got 4 rings. He's got a Finals MVP. He's the greatest shooter we've ever seen. I think he's the greatest ball handler we've ever seen. So to me, he's the greatest point guard of all time. Magic Johnson is right there beneath him. Clearly, Michael Jordan is better all time than him. Clearly, LeBron James is better all time than him, even though there are a lot of people out there saying, oh, LeBron only has 4 rings and Steph now has 4 rings. If this is LeBron's era, why does Steph have 4 rings? And he did it in fewer finals appearances. He has a better record in the finals. All these things. Well, and some people are saying he's had, more help, less help. I think Steph has had less help than LeBron has had throughout his career, because LeBron, I get it, Steph had Kevin Durant, Draymond, and Klay. Like, we understand that. That was for 3 seasons. LeBron had 8 seasons with Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving, or Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. That's a lot of freaking seasons with 2 megastars, superstars. They had 3 superstars on one team at a time. The Warriors have never had 3 superstars on a team at a time. They've had 2 in Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, and then they've had other all-stars with Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. Draymond is nowhere near superstar level, and Klay is not quite to superstar level. Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade were both superstars, especially before they got to Miami. In Miami, Bosh had to take a back seat, so he wasn't a superstar for those years, but he was capable of it, and so he was the perfect third option. Same thing with Kevin Love in Cleveland. Kevin Love, people can say what they want. The guy was, well, maybe he wasn't superstar level, if we're being honest. He was Mega all-star though. He was a 25-12 guy in Minnesota. It's tough to be a superstar when you aren't making playoff runs ever. So I'll give him that. But those were talented, mega talented teammates that LeBron had, and he had it for actually 7 seasons because Kyrie left a year before LeBron did, but to go to the Lakers. But Steph only had 3 years with Kevin Durant, and they won 2 titles. They would have won a third, but in the third finals, KD and Clay both went out with injuries. It's like 2 of your 3 best players go out with injuries. Good luck. Imagine like Michael Jordan and Dennis Rodman going out with injury. I don't think Scottie Pippen would have won the championship any of those years, So anyway, so that's my take on Steph's legacy. I think that he right now is in the top 10 of all time, and I don't think that Kevin Durant is. Even though Kevin Durant is the better player, you have to look at accolades and accomplishments and other things beyond just skill. And I think that puts Steph ahead of KD. And Charles Barkley said, until he is the guy, meaning Kevin Durant, on a championship team, we're not ever going to give him the respect that he probably deserves. So, and if anyone knows about this, it's Barkley, because Barkley was the man. He's a league MVP. The guy was absolutely dominant, but he never won a title. He was in Michael Jordan's shadow for his entire career. He made it to 1 finals and lost to Michael Jordan, and he could never quite get over the hump. And so if anyone understands what it's like to not get the respect you deserve because you don't have a title, it's Charles Barkley. And he's saying Kevin Durant, he's admitting Kevin Durant's better than me, meaning Barkley, and he is. But he's saying he doesn't have a title as the guy. Like Steph, even though he got the finals MVP, Steph was still kind of like, it was his team, and they already done it before he got there, and now they've done it since he left. So KD's in trouble. I think he's going to have to make some serious changes. By the way, his top 10, I'll finish with this. ESPN came out with their top 10 all time. They've got Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Larry Bird, Tim Duncan, Oscar Robertson, Kobe Bryant. Okay, I get it. I get what they're doing here. They're trying to respect eras, but like Steph Curry is better than Oscar Robertson. Steph Curry is better than Bill Russell. He's better than Wilt Chamberlain. Shaquille O'Neal is better than all 3 of those guys as well. So right there, I can replace those 3 with two others, and maybe I bump Bill Russell down to 10th and leave him in, and I replace Wilt Chamberlain and Oscar Robertson with Shaquille O'Neal and Steph Curry. That would be a more reasonable top 10 for me. So let me see if I have any other notes here, you guys. This was actually a really fun podcast. I think that's pretty much it. Very excited for the offseason. We'll see what happens. Lots going on. Obviously, sports slow down a little bit now. I'll still be doing the podcast every Monday, so don't go away. Hope you guys had a great Father's Day, a great Juneteenth. I will see you next week. I am out. Peace.
Thanks for hanging with Simply the Best Sports Take. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and check out STB Sports Take.com. Simply the best in sports.